your live. Welcome. Hi, friends. I'm Elliot. El de Faith. Depends on what you read. I get excited to share cool, interesting shit that I've uncovered, discovered, combined to make something cool. And there's a responsibility to wisdom, to knowledge, to information, if those were rungs on a ladder of discernment climbing down. And there's so much confusion about, rather maybe around, those being the same. Information, data, knowledge, wisdom, power, as being used synonymously. And that couldn't be the farthest thing from the truth. In fact, the finitude or fineness, because they both mean very different things, but I mean them both right now, of the wire, the line that we tread as we learn more and more, and the ability to communicate it, and the responsibility to discern what we will share, and then what needs to be kept and conveyed by being silent. I'm Canadian. I'm a lot of things. And in my experience, it's very, and I mean no discrimination, except that I'm being discriminate. So take that or leave it. But it's a very American notion that if you know something, then you have a responsibility to share it. And it's not anyone's fault. It's like a culture of manipulation, right? Not the same, but as an example, I grew up with Canadians, they live in igloos, don't they? It's really cold up there, isn't it? And being like that being the running joke about us south of the border, a boot and all that good stuff. And then actually traveling down there and that actually being the most common response, to my being Canadian. It's oh, it's cold up there, right? Yeah, but it's a lot warmer than a lot of America. geography, temperate zones, waters, deserts. Like it's all makes a difference. And along the lines of that love of just general disillusionment is the fallacy of the straightest or fastest way from the fastest or quickest way from one point to another is a straight line. And that's just not true. There are no straight lines in nature. The only straight lines are the curves that are so large or you're so close to so as that they appear straight. Like take a circle and then look at a point on it and it's like that's clearly curving. But if you were to expand that circle towards infinity, eventually that point would appear as something straight right before it appears as like nothing, because it's all you can see. Light doesn't travel in straight lines either. And the insidious truth that I'm kind of underpining is what you see is what you get. And if you have something and you don't know you have it, you don't have it. Kind of moving into my area of pain, that as a part of my healing and progression, I'm going to kind of like share and whatnot, is my experience with my family. I'm going to speak more specifically about my mother, whom I love super dearly and completely understand and have all the compassion for. In so much that I'm using her and my relationship or her relationship with like her world as far as I can perceive it, specifically, but it would be useful also to just consider her generally, like anybody, because it totally applies. Again, in my perception. So she has all of these really beautiful, like ornamental, like candle holders. And throughout the year, she might switch them up. But when they're not being used, they're kept in boxes in like a storeroom. So in my own kind of like organizing and creating more space by putting things where they, take up less room, I was like, these like little objects of beauty are not existing while they're in these boxes. And so I took it upon myself and seized the opportunity to liberate them, and place them about my room. In that same kind of adventure of exploring and finding and whatnot, like I came across other kind of cool shit. And her response to something like, "Oh, I forgot I had that," or "I didn't realize, we had this thing," or we would come across some kind of common household predicament, clean something, fix something like that, and then I'll like go into where I keep what looks like junk, but it's like it's my like storehouse of junk that I I I I take from things that people threw away and make cool shit out of or repair shit with as a hobbyist for fun. Looked at in a different way. If you have a lot of savings, money, for instance, but really anything. Actually, food is a really good example. I'll switch because this is a lesson that I learned firsthand, and I prefer to speak about myself, anyways. It's the only really thing that I feel like I have the most right to talk to. When I was younger, I would eat my food in the order, more or less, of what I liked the least, and I would save what I liked the most for last. And one day, I have this like cool uncle. I only have one cool uncle. I have more than one uncle, but he's like really the only cool uncle I have. Because I don't know, he's a bit of an asshole, but like he's an asshole that in a way that I appreciate, in like I don't know, in like a kind way. Anyways, so we're sitting at like some family gathering, and I must be around 9 or 10 or I don't know, some kid age, and he's sitting next to me, and I've got like fettuccine alfredo with shrimp and seafood. It's got like scallops and shit. I'm eating the pasta. It's like just so basically fettuccine alfredo or linguine alfredo, whatever, is boring ass pasta in a cream sauce with yummy shit like next to it. So I was eating the boring shit, and I had these big fucking pieces of shrimp, and I'm like saving them. I might like eat one, like partition them throughout the meal a little bit, but mostly I was just saving them. And he like looked at my plate and was like, he saw these like three, and he's like, it's my uncle and I'm a kid, and he's like, look at all the shrimp. I'm like, yeah. He's like, cool. And he just takes his fork and eats it. It's like, and like, I was probably more like dismayed than I remember because of the value of what I learned from that. I wouldn't say I was pissed. I was more like, oh, but oh. And I don't know if it was anything he really said, although I'm sure, like, he could have been like, well, like, hey man, what else are they there for? Something, something like really simple, but I took that and went with it. But I realized that whatever I think I'm saving, I'm really just not, I just really don't have. Not until I use it. You going with that same food analogy, I would like if I'm saving the best for last, I might be full by the time I get to it. And I was raised to eat every last morsel of food on my plate. So I do. Which isn't always a good idea. It is when you like put the right amount of food on your plate, but you don't enjoy the best when it's last. Especially if you have to like force it. Because if you don't, then why else did you go through what you went through? You know? So my first bite now is usually some part of the best part. And I might, divvy it up throughout the meal. And in life, the best part can be every part you choose. But if you're like saving the fine linen, you're saving. I don't know if you're watching this, you might have grown up where it was super popular in like our generations for families to have living rooms that no one went into. You know, you're saving this space, you're saving this thing for, I don't even know. It's like you don't have it. And then you die. And that might be part of like the fear mongering, but also like the true, like too bad of our like time enslavement. We're forced to grip, strangle basically, and withhold anything that we can get our hands on, but also to really eke out the last drops of sweat and tears and put it aside and be too scared to use it. What does this have to do with being an empath and being abused? And I hardly choose to give any time to the myth and thought entity of the narcissist. But we're going to speak to it today. So, what does all this have to do with that? Discernment. And it's not so much that there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's a saying. It's weird. I gotta look that up. Why is that? Anyways, there's more than one empathic response to bullshit. And anyways, that's what plus anything else that you might with your own intelligence be able to like connect with how you feel and what I've said. I could totally rant and become impassioned speaking of this. So I'm going to mostly read things, I think, that I wrote. But before I go there, I'm going to speak really plainly about a pain that I feel the most and tends to break my heart repeatedly, or at least stab it, pointy poke it. I emotional repression is super common, and it's more common in some cultures and families and others. In mine, it's dominant. It's funny. It's not funny. It's interesting. We're curious. But having our gallbladders removed is like this ailment on this side of the family. Really, the only side of my family. I'm not really connected with my father's side, but that cool uncle was on that side. My other uncles on my mom's side aren't cool so much as just good men. But in traditional Chinese medicine, which I studied full time for a year, and I learned shiatsu, mostly because I was fascinated by the like retroductive intelligence of like this medicinal like therapy, and that was like it wasn't based on what we think we should do. It was like over as much time as we've had, we notice that when this happens, this happens. This. It's like it's discernment and cause and effect and balance and in my experience, it's like fucking spot on. And the gallbladder is associated with the liver, and when it is in dysfunction, it has to do with the suppression of your emotions, especially anger, because the liver, when it is in dysfunction, like excess heat, it is suffering from not suppressed anger but rage, like raw anger. And when there are arguments or disagreements in with between members of my family, and now I'm going to speak only of myself, although it's more prevalent than that. Instead of talking about it, you get upset. You make character judgments, like character shaming, and then someone walks away, storms off, stops talking. And then, depending on the magnitude of the exchange, you wait and like the necessity of like the proximity, right? Do I live with you? Do you live in the same building? You know, do we live in the same part of town? How often do I have to see you? All those things depending, there's just no talking until again, in my experience, like I understand, I've like forgiven myself, I'm giving myself self-compassion, and at least more recently, as I've matured, just recognized that I can't force anyone anything. But enough time passes, and it's just like, oh, we're just gonna forget that ever happened. And then we get all chummy and we're kind again, and then until another act of disrespect and abuse that's like similar to what's happened in the past occurs, and the whole cycle kind of repeats itself. And this is super common, and it's not okay. Just because, like, my immediate family has seen my temper, my like righteous rage, really, more than anyone else. And I used to think, and I used to excuse that as like, well, they're closest to me, they're around, they're gonna push me and rub me the wrong way, and they're gonna see that one way or another. But it's not it, actually, because I've gotten a great deal more intimate and close with lovers and friends, and it never comes to that, because I'm not the kind of person, I've never been someone that can tolerate disrespect and injustice. And I don't mean disrespect in like respect your elders kind of way, because that shit pisses me off too. You don't get my respect arbitrarily because you're older than me. No. Sorry. I know that sounds disrespectful, but everyone gets a lot of respect from me off the hop, and then it's pretty much theirs to lose. And just because like, I have a super long fuse for just about everything. But once my fuse is lit and burnt, it's gone. And the same thing is going to continue to piss me off. And I'm not going to just snap all the time, because truthfully, I can't anymore. I've got too much of a relationship with my awareness and my consciousness. Although might look like that to someone on the outside. But just because someone moves quickly doesn't mean they're rushing. And just because like someone, or like just because like an abuser who doesn't want to see how they're abusing themselves, or how they're abusing me, doesn't want to see how they're doing that, or doesn't want to, and this is funny, experience the pain of kind of self-realizing a deeper truth about whatever we're talking about. And it's kind of funny because it's not more painful than what they're putting themselves and trying to put me through too. But just because that is like the way that you carry on and carry yourself does not make it okay that you continue to abuse me. And I'm not going to stop trying to, in as like gentler way, to inform you that like this behavior is abusive towards me, and if you continue, you're you're going to like activate an appropriate response, because often like the dim-witted, and I really fucking mean that, it's like Elliot just blew up over like nothing. I didn't fucking blow up over nothing. You know, it was like, it was the straw uh, that broke my back. And it's not fair when that straw breaks your back and you're quiet the whole time. And it's like, no, I'm like, please don't do that. That hurts me. Please don't do that. That hurts me. Please don't do that. That hurts me. Please don't do this thing specifically, because when you do that, I feel this. Then feeling this makes me consider how are you feeling towards me, and all of that makes me then think and feel, and then like I'm basically like you're cornering me into a situation. So please don't do that. Or like when you do that, I feel like you're doing it like this. Is this accurate? Like, do you really feel like this? Or like, I, I just, I like, I would love to think or believe that you feel this way about me, but when you act like this, it hurts and it totally goes against that belief. So maybe you don't think that, or there's a limit to your thinking that, like, just how, why, what, where, can we figure it out? And then like it's like nothing, 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 and then another straw, and it's just like, fuck you, solidly. And then they get scared and run away. To be fair, I'm scary, and I know that. And spiritually, I've come to understand more and more why. But I think it has something to do with the truth of consciousness and the truth of free will. And it's never been okay for anyone to bully me or really anyone near me. I have never gotten in like a fight. There's like, I have to like say there's like been like two occasions ish with like a little pushing back and forth, and they have to count because I've never gotten in a fight. And if you've watched any of my videos, or even if just fuck you just hanging out for this one for the first time, like, it's not because I'm not adversarial. You know, it's not because I keep my opinion always to myself. I was considering it before I made this video. I think it's just because, in part, I never, ever, it's not even something I have to combat. I never want to hurt you. Like, I never, in all of my anger and, like, I'm talking like, like a fucking, you know, if a butterfly flaps its wings somewhere elsewhere is a tornado, man. When I like there's like a supernova galaxy neutrino being formed somewhere in the fucking universe. But like, I say that because even at the height and heat of the most, there's like no iota, no little aspect of like no thought that needs to be like, oh, chill out, Elliot. It's like no part of me is inclined, thinks, or anything like that uh, about hurting someone, not even emotionally. But like, I say that because it's like Like, definitely not physically. I've never been so angry at anyone or anything that, like, I want to hurt them. Like, oh, if you just, I'm just going to punch you in your face. It's like, no. It's kind of like crazy. Only to me because it's like, I get the impression that that's a more normal response, but I've like punched walls and like, I think most recently, I took like a little plastic like antenna on the stereo thing and like threw it on the ground and then people get frightened of that shit too. But it's like it's energy, and it has to go somewhere. And that's in part why I confess these powerful responses that I can have. Because just because like I punch like a hole in the bedroom door or smash a plastic thingy doesn't mean that I want to hurt anything. Like, it's not even like I have to hurt something, so I punch a wall. No, it's force and velocity and not suppressing, because it's not okay to make me feel this way. And I can honestly say that those responses don't occur unconsciously for me. When I respond strongly in anger to something that's angering, that's fucking appropriate, right? Like, the common misperception, in my opinion, of being an empath is the appropriate response is always to back off or be a punching bag. And what is dangerous to say, which is why at 38 minutes I'm only mentioning it, like uh, a person's anger, which is really just a label for a passionate response, like, that's still compassion. And when like a person that's basically abusing me because they haven't learned as yet how to not abuse themselves, and then basically makes that your problem, makes that my problem. In a way, I'm kind of moving that through, because what I'm saying isn't you're stupid, you're this, you're that. Although I will call stupid. But like, even in my passion, in my compassion, even in my passion, it's compassionate because I'm with you. Like, like, this is how you're creating this with me. And we don't need to psychoanalyze, especially if you've really pissed me off. but you really pissing me off didn't trigger me. It's like, this is the appropriate response to that, because that is not okay. And you need to be more weary of being cruel. I think I'm almost going to end in that, because what I want to say more, I'm going to make another short video, because it's a lot more plain and simple. And for the attention impaired, I'd rather that information be more accessible and readily understandable than kind of the wisdom that I convey at the end of these shares. But if I were to kind of sum up the point of this expression, it would be, I very much desire to share what my keen-ass intellect and my surefire love has figured out. But in order to do that, I need to confess ways that I've been hurt. Not maybe necessarily to you, but we find ourselves at this junction, this social junction, where I don't have someone to talk to. And so if I just go ahead and make these interesting explaining type posts with this bullshit ruminating, it's not kind to myself. And I think it just takes one, maybe two, depending on who, hearing me. Just being, and like not here nor there or good or bad, just hearing and saying, like, I hear you. And not anywhere except like in their mind and in their heart. And I can feel that. Because co-creation is the name of the game, and you can't co-create by yourself. Like the final step really of all healing is sharing your healing with others. And not necessarily like healing others, but sharing your wound and your self-love and just being like, I know I make sense. Do I make sense to you? And then hearing, yeah, you do. Again, in the heart and the mind. I'll close with this. And I've probably mentioned before, and I'll probably mention it again. Agreeing to disagree is like the anthem motto of separation and emotional suppression. It's not progressive to agree to disagree. It's like that's implicit of conflict that will not be resolved. It's like when we agree to disagree, there's something that we're trying to make permanent between us. Yeah. No. And it also implies this thing called agreeing, which connotates not agreeing, which basically means every point is an argument. When in actuality, and this is most often why people, fuck it, I'm going to generalize people because really in my experience, it's like everyone. Eventually just doesn't even want anything to do with me. And that's actually more complex and energetically my sacrifice than this solely. But anyways, it's that when you suppress your shit, you necessarily have this false perception of right or wrong or correctness and incorrectness, of winning and losing. Competition, that word has been co-opted to mean me against you, when the root of competition means to strive together, just like versus. It's, it's me versus you. It's like, no, that word's been co-opted from verses like music. And there's no right or wrong. I don't like, it's again, it's like I was saying before, I said like this, I just don't work this way. Maybe I read too much as a child. Oh dear. For me, the only right, the only end is the only continue. The object of all interaction and love truly is, and like evolution and like all things awesome, is are we, you and I, perceiving the same thing samely, right? Then like it's not agreeing to disagree. It's like, oh, I see how you can see the way that you see. And then you take turns. Like, it's like, can you see how I can see the way that I see? And then when that between in like relationship is like simply all the way true, then the magic of creation and destruction, like is the fabric of sustenance. because the like the perspectives merge, and perhaps one, is so like, oh, you know what? I was seeing it completely another way, and now that I see it the way that you were saying you're seeing it, it's the way that I see it. Like I see that now. That's not you're right. That's like, oh, we're seeing the same thing the same way now. We're both right now. But even then, and truly most commonly, with the merge of perceptions, there's more layers and resilience due to like the synergy of cooperation and integration, right? Because even if we take that same scenario of one appearing on like first glance appearing to completely take on this new this different paradigm, the one who's superficially paradigm, like I'm not like the way that you were seeing it, I see how you see that, that's not how I see it, and I'm not going to see it that way. And then the other person's like, yeah, no, that makes sense, I see it your way, we see it the same way now. They can both now, especially person A, who's like got the more, I don't know, like more maybe the more convincingly discerned viewpoint, they now have this thicker interpretation, understanding of how their perception might be appropriate one way or another, but it is forever changed and filled in, because whenever it is conveyed, it is now informed by the very possibility that it can be perceived as this other viewpoint, and will forevermore be communicated with that in mind and with that care to address and respect, and kind of like keep it open a little bit, because maybe it takes like the 13th person to have that viewpoint and be like, wow, this is like a really common viewpoint, like there must be something there that I'm missing that is still true, that I'm not encapsulating, that like, because it's so dominant. And then like the 19th person says it in such a way, but also includes some new points that the 18 previous hadn't. That makes you go like, "Phew. I completely see it that way now. I was not wrong. This isn't now right. It's deeper. It's inclusive. It's magic. It's divine. And simple too." So sometimes back off as an empath, but sometimes having empathy for another's anger means feeling their anger as yours. And the most responsible thing is to not be triggered. That is such a bullshit word, in that it's becoming like, it was effective until everyone started using it to mean fucking everything. It's like, Or like when something in your environment causes something to happen, it's a trigger. It's like, no, man, that's just a happening. And now it's a choice. And I guess trigger can connotate like, I didn't make the choice, it's just happening. Well, that's just called acting unconsciously. Remember when we used to call it that? Because I got triggers in that I've got like environmental cues that make me aware and cautious, not afraid of what may or may not happen, so that I can act responsibly to defend myself, my integrity, and like the integrity of my environment. And that might be someone else. That just might be my heart. And it can be so wise and like time appropriate. Super challenging because we live in like a culture where it's like, don't get angry or we'll throw you in jail. And anger equates to abuse always. It's like, no, it's not fucking. You just don't like it when I stand up for myself, you fucker. But when you can effectively mirror someone's anger back at them, I've seen it. It changes them because the ridiculousness, maybe, of their upsettedness, and maybe even just the way that they're like, wow, like I'm being cruel, and look what my cruelty did, because this person's not trying to hurt me. They're like they are effectively conveying their upsettedness in an appropriate magnitude to the disservice and the injustice that I've done to them. And I can think all I want about how I'm right or they're overreacting or anything like that, but here's proof of some aspect of my responsibility, because I just character shamed this person, and this person turned around and said, fuck you. That has nothing to do with what has transgressed here. You've just character shamed me. Basically, you're just trying to hurt me, which, if we go back, is what I'm trying to tell you. And when shit calms down and they return, and I'm treating them with all the love and kindness and appropriateness that I always have, but also not ignoring the fact that that happened, right? It gives them the opportunity to be emotionally responsible. There is a consequence to being cruel. And it's a narcissistic like bylaw to be like, if you're a kind person, you're never, you just never get upset. And like, as a fucking yoga teacher, that bullshit I got all the time from my family. Aren't you supposed to be zen? Aren't you supposed to be calm? Like, yeah, it's a meat room in here, a cooler. I'm not out of control. You're being cruel to me. And when you're cruel to people, this is what happens to you. It's not okay. And we're all different. My superpower is don't fuck with me. Don't fuck with the people that I love with. Otherwise, you're going to have to face yourself through me, and that's going to scare the shit out of you. Others are a lot sweeter and nicer about it. But I can't be me without you being you in that way, you know? Because that's not the most effective. If I was God, uh, I would build in more complexity, more variety, more fun, and more fail safes. So yeah, I think that's it. I hope that more than anything in this video, the way it's kind of like ramped up, I hope that anything that I've said as a kind, compassionate person, that I've bolstered your like righteous integrity to uh, express your anger at the injustice in your life. It's not always the response, right? And it's never it should never be used to try and change people. You know, it's not like, oh, like I always walk away because it's like there's no use. Like that's a tool in the belt, and sometimes the tool in the belt is a solid fuck you. It's not okay to treat me that way. And if you continue to treat me that way, I will show you what that looks like bouncing off of me and back at you. And if I could like insert any amount of sanity through the insanity of like the emotional confusion, is that however scared you think you are of me is not me, because I fucking love you. And like, given just about every other circumstance, should like it should it arise, like I can fucking tell you off right now. And if something is jeopardizing uh, your safety or your love or our love, like right after, I'll turn around and whatever the fuck that is, better not fuck with you. Because I will always got you. Yo, love is gangster. Yeah. Shit ain't right. Some people just need to be told that. I'm pretty much going to go right into another right now. So if you're seeing this at any other time, it's probably going to have some title like Narcissism Fail or Narcissists is the root of sissy. And by that I mean coward or wimp. Or you're so fucking insecure that you bully others. You just try and bully me and see what you'll do to you. It's a bit long. And it'll be shorter. But thank you for joining me, because I fucking love you. And it's not right. Which is why we fight. To liberate those words. Like warrior, It's not for war. It's for roar. And everything is for love too. I love you. It's true. And I hope I see you soon. Namaste.